If you're reading this right now, it's because the universe timed this exact moment. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Now. You've already won, and in the next few minutes I'm going to show you how to recognize that victory in the very breath you're taking. Here's my promise. Within the next 24 hours, you'll start noticing confirmation signals in your body and your environment without forcing a single thing. But here's what matters. There's a window open right now. If you walk through it with me, your perception shifts today, not someday, today. So take a deep breath in, let it out slow, and notice 3 points where your body touches something: the chair, the floor, the air on your skin. That's your first signal. You're already in the field. Here's what most people miss. Synchronicity isn't magic. It's when your inner world and outer reality speak the same language at the same time. And coherence? That's when what you feel, think, and do finally walk in the same direction. You're not just the player making moves. You're the entire field responding to those moves. The observer isn't passive. When you notice something with real presence, you change what appears. Think of yourself as a photographer adjusting focus. The scene is already there, but your adjustment reveals details that were invisible a second ago. Today, we're climbing in spiral. Perceive, integrate, surrender. You know that weird feeling when everything seems to go wrong on the same day? Here's what most people miss. It's not bad luck. It's your internal climate broadcasting a signal that the field picks up and mirrors back to you. Think of yourself as a glass of clear water and your emotional state as a single drop of dye. That drop doesn't just color one part, it shifts the entire tone of the glass. Your state isn't separate from what shows up. It's the invisible frequency that shapes what appears. I'll never forget this one afternoon when I was running late for 3 meetings in a row. The traffic was insane. My phone died right when I needed directions, and then the cafe messed up my order twice. I was fuming, right? But here's where it got interesting. I stopped for 2 minutes in my car, named what I was feeling out loud. I'm anxious and frustrated. And just breathed until that tension dropped maybe 10%. Just that small shift in my internal weather changed everything. When I walked into that impossible customer service situation expecting a fight, the attendant suddenly opened an exception nobody had mentioned before. Same person, same policies, but my field had changed. And so did the response. It wasn't magic. It was coherence. The world doesn't respond to what you say or even what you think you want. It responds to the tone you're broadcasting underneath it all. Here's something you can try right now, and I mean literally right now. Do a climate check-in. Say out loud in a whisper if you need to, exactly what state you're in. I'm scattered. I'm anxious about that call. I'm excited but trying to hide it. Just naming it drops the charge by 10%, sometimes more. That 10% is enough for the field to catch a different signal from you. And here's the thing nobody tells you about awareness. It's not about being perfect or always positive. It's about being honest with what's actually broadcasting. You can't shift what you won't acknowledge. So here's my question for you. When was the last time the environment around you seemed to perfectly match or even amplify your mood? Because once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. But naming your state is just the beginning. What happens next is where most people get stuck, because they think awareness alone is enough. It's not. There's a second layer that determines whether that awareness actually changes anything. And that's where your attention becomes the most powerful creative tool you've ever had. What I'm about to show you is how that attention literally shapes what shows up. Here's something that sounds mystical until you live it. Your attention isn't passive. It's the most creative force you have. Think about riding a bike at night with a headlamp. You're not discovering the path. You're literally creating it by choosing where to point that beam. The road exists in darkness, sure, but the rideable path only appears where your light lands. Your consciousness works the same way. The form organizes itself around wherever you decide to shine your awareness. Most people think attention is just noticing stuff, but that's like saying a flashlight just shows things. No, it creates the experience of space itself. Where you put your focus, energy gathers, patterns emerge, possibilities crystallize. Where you don't look, things stay formless, potential, but not actual. This isn't philosophy, This is mechanics. The field responds to the observer's gaze by offering up the form that matches that frequency of attention. I learned this the hard way during a business negotiation that was going sideways fast. I was locked into fear of losing this deal, and guess what my attention kept creating? More evidence I was about to lose. Every sentence from the other side sounded like a rejection. My inner headlamp was pointed straight at failure, so failure kept lighting up in high definition. Then I caught myself, took a breath, and made one small shift. I changed the question my attention was asking. Instead of, "How am I going to lose this?" I asked, "What here already wants to work?" That's it. Same room, same people, same numbers on the table, but a completely different beam of light. And within 5 minutes, I spotted an angle neither of us had seen before. A win-win structure that was sitting right there the whole time, invisible until my consciousness illuminated it with a different quality of attention. Here's your practice, and it's absurdly simple but wildly effective. The focus swap. When you're stuck, stressed, or spiraling, stop and ask a better question. Not a positive thinking fluff question, but a precise one that redirects your light. What's already working here? What does this situation want to become? What would alignment look like right now? Better questions create better light, and better light reveals better forms. It's not about ignoring problems, it's about illuminating solutions with the same intensity you've been using to spotlight disasters. And here's what nobody warns you about. Once you realize your attention is this powerful, you start noticing where you've been aiming it by default. Most people have their headlamp duct taped to point at threats, problems, worst-case scenarios. They wonder why life feels dark and dangerous, but you're starting to see that you hold the light. So let me ask you, if your attention is the beam that creates the path, what are you illuminating right now? Fear or possibility? Scarcity or coherence? Because here's where it gets even wilder. And this is the part that changed how I see every choice I make. It's not just where you point the light. It's understanding that even the smallest choice, the tiniest redirect of focus, doesn't just change one thing. It changes the entire hologram. You've probably heard that every choice matters, but here's what that actually means at the quantum level. Reality isn't linear like dominoes falling. It's holographic. If you break a hologram into pieces, each tiny fragment still contains the whole image. Your life works the same way. One micro decision doesn't just affect one area, it rewrites the entire pattern. Change a single detail, and the complete picture shifts, because every part contains information about the whole. This is why a random Tuesday morning choice can redirect your entire year. It's not dramatic, it's structural. When you make a decision that's coherent with a different timeline, even something as small as answering a call you'd normally ignore or taking a different route home, you're not just tweaking one variable, you're selecting a different hologram, a different version of the field where all the pieces reorganize around that new frequency of alignment. I lived this in the most unexpected way. I had a project that was stuck for months, funding issues, partnership problems, creative blocks, the whole mess. I tried everything, new strategies, different pitches, consulting experts, nothing moved. Then one afternoon I made an unplanned phone call to someone I barely knew, just following a quiet intuition that said, reach out. That single 5-minute conversation opened a partnership that completely redesigned my entire year. It wasn't the call itself that was magic. It was that the call was coherent with a timeline where things flow. That micro-choice carried the signature of the whole pattern I actually wanted. And because reality is holographic, that one aligned action pulled all the other pieces into a new configuration. The funding appeared, the creative block dissolved, even relationships that were tense suddenly smoothed out. Same projects, same goals, but a completely different drawing because I'd shifted which hologram I was operating inside. Here's your practice. Pick one micro-habit that takes 60 seconds or less, something that pulls the timeline you actually want. If you want a year of clarity and creativity, maybe it's clearing your desk before you start creating each day. If you want deeper relationships, maybe it's sending one genuine message every morning to someone you care about. If you want abundance, maybe it's organizing your finances for 60 seconds before bed. Small? Yes. but it contains the whole pattern. Because here's what most people miss about consciousness. It's not about big gestures or life-altering decisions. It's about micro-coherence. One choice that matches the frequency of who you're becoming rewrites the hologram. The field recognizes alignment at any scale and responds by reorganizing everything else to match. So here's my question. What micro-choice could you make today that would shift the entire picture of your month? What 60-second action carries the signature of the life you're actually building? But here's where it gets practical, because all this understanding of holograms and timelines means nothing if it stays abstract. The real question is, how do you take consciousness and turn it into something you can touch? Something that shows up in your actual daily life. That's what most people get wrong, and that's exactly what I'm about to show you. Here's the trap most spiritual seekers fall into. They collect insights like trophies but never turn them into muscle memory. Consciousness without action is like light that never touches ground. Beautiful, inspiring, and completely useless. You can know all the quantum physics, understand every metaphor about fields and frequencies, but if it doesn't show up in how you start your morning or handle a difficult conversation, it's just intellectual entertainment. Coherence isn't something you understand. It's something you become through daily practice. Think of making coffee with a pour-over. The water is your intention, hot, full of potential. Your values and principles are the filter. They determine what passes through and what gets caught. And the coffee itself, the actual drinkable result, that's your embodied reality. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if there's no filter, no structure, no daily ritual that gives those intentions a body, you just end up with hot water. Awareness needs a container, and that container is your habits. I used to have the most chaotic mornings, waking up late, checking my phone immediately, rushing through everything in survival mode. I knew better. I'd read all the books, but my body hadn't learned the lesson yet. Then I built a 7-minute ritual. 2 minutes of intentional breathing, 2 minutes writing one clear intention for the day, 3 minutes organizing my workspace before I touched any device. That's it. 7 minutes gave consciousness a body. And here's what shocked me. My creative output doubled. Not because I was working more hours, but because I was working from alignment instead of panic. The field responds to coherence, and coherence starts with these tiny embodied choices. It's not about perfection. It's about creating a bridge between what you know and what you do. Every time you honor that bridge, you're training your nervous system to recognize what alignment feels like in your actual flesh and bones. Here's your practice, and this one will change everything if you actually use it. The 3 alignments protocol before any task. First, take 3 conscious breaths. This tells your body, we're present now. Second, state your intention in one clear sentence. This tells the field what frequency you're broadcasting. Third, take one small physical action toward that intention. This gives light a form. Breath, intention, action. Consciousness becoming matter. Most people skip this because it seems too simple, but simplicity is how you build coherence into your nervous system. You don't need an hour of meditation or a perfect morning routine. You need a repeatable micro-ritual that reminds your body what alignment feels like. So here's my question. What 7-minute ritual could give your best internal state a physical form? What simple structure could turn your awareness into something you can actually live inside? Because once you learn to embody consciousness in your solo life, the real test appears, other people. And that's where everything you've learned either becomes real power or falls apart completely. What comes next is how you take all this internal coherence and make it work when you're facing another human being, with their own field, their own frequency, their own version of reality. Here's the paradox nobody warns you about. Authenticity without compassion turns you into a hammer, and compassion without truth turns you into a doormat. Most people think being real means saying whatever they feel whenever they feel it, but that's not coherence. That's just unfiltered reactivity. Real authenticity is like playing your instrument in tune with the orchestra. Your note needs to be genuinely yours, but it also needs to listen to and harmonize with the other instruments in the room. The field doesn't reward brutal honesty or fake niceness. It rewards truthful kindness. That's when your internal alignment meets someone else's consciousness without forcing, without hiding, without pretending. It's the hardest practice because another person's frequency can knock you out of your center in seconds. They trigger you, they misunderstand you, they want something different than what you're offering, and suddenly all that beautiful solo coherence you built, it gets tested in real time. I had to learn this with a family member I'd been avoiding for years. Every conversation turned into the same argument, the same patterns, the same exhausting dance. One day I decided to try something different. The triad of simple truth plus respect plus clear request. I told them calmly what mattered to me in the situation. I acknowledged what seemed important to them. Then I asked one clear question. How do we honor both? That's it. What happened next still surprises me. Years of defensive walls just dropped. Not completely, not forever, but enough for a real conversation to happen. The shift wasn't in changing their mind or winning the argument. It was in bringing my most authentic frequency while staying curious about theirs. Coherence in relationship isn't about agreement. It's about two different notes creating harmony instead of noise. Here's your practice for the next difficult conversation you face. Use the bridge phrase. When tension rises, pause and say this. What's important to you here? Here's what matters to me. How do we bring these together? 3 parts. Their truth, your truth, shared curiosity. This isn't a script to manipulate. It's a structure to hold space for 2 fields to meet without one dominating the other. It requires you to stay in your authenticity while genuinely caring about their experience. And here's what I've learned about awareness in relationships. You can feel when someone is being real with you versus performing. Your body knows. The field knows. People don't need you to be perfect or always positive. They need you to be congruent. They need to feel that what you're saying matches what you're broadcasting underneath. So here's my question. How would your truth sound today if you spoke it with both courage and care? What would change if you stopped choosing between being real and being kind? Because here's what most people don't realize about authenticity and compassion. They're not the final destination. They're the foundation for something even more powerful. The ability to hold your intention with absolute clarity while simultaneously releasing all attachment to how it unfolds. And that dance between effort and surrender, that's where the real magic lives. Here's the most misunderstood skill in manifestation. Trust isn't passive hoping, it's an active creative force. Most people think they need to control every step, grip every outcome, force every door open. But the field doesn't reward force. It rewards the paradox of clear intention married to radical surrender. It's like surfing. You paddle with absolute commitment toward the wave, but the moment you feel it catch you, you have to let go of controlling how it lifts you. That release isn't giving up. It's precision timing. The universe operates on rhythms you can't see from your limited vantage point. Your job isn't to micromanage the delivery system. Your job is to get so clear on the what and why that you can release the how and when. Consciousness sets the frequency, but the field arranges the form. When you try to control both, you create interference. When you hold intention and surrender the mechanics, you create coherence, and coherence always finds the shortest path. I learned this the expensive way. I was about to launch a project I'd worked on for months. Everything was ready, the date was set, promotional materials were out. Then I got this quiet, persistent feeling. Not yet. No logic, no clear reason, just an intuition that said, wait. I postponed everything, and honestly, I felt like an idiot. 2 weeks later, an external event happened that I couldn't have predicted, and it multiplied my reach by 10 times what I'd originally planned for. That wasn't luck. That was me finally learning to trust the field's timing over my ego's schedule. The intention was crystal clear, written down, non-negotiable. But I'd released my stranglehold on the how and when. And here's what nobody tells you about surrender. It doesn't mean you stop acting. It means you act from flow instead of force, from alignment instead of anxiety. You stay ready, stay prepared, but you stop trying to drag the river in your direction. Here's your practice, and this one requires real courage. Write your intention in one clear line. Not 5 paragraphs of wishes. One sentence that captures the essence of what you're calling in. Then sit in 2 minutes of silence, and in that silence, consciously release your grip on controlling how it shows up. This isn't magical thinking, it's energetic precision. The field recompenses surrender with timing that your limited perspective could never orchestrate alone. And here's the anchor phrase that changed everything for me. The field rewards surrender with precision. Say it when you're tempted to force, manipulate, or control. Your intention is the North Star, but your surrender is the sail that catches winds you couldn't even see coming. So here's my final question. What are you holding so tightly that you're blocking the very thing you're asking for? What could you release today without abandoning your vision? Here's what it all comes down to. You are the living bridge between energy and matter, between the invisible and the tangible. Every affectionate gesture, every clear choice, every simple action, that's divinity becoming human, consciousness becoming form. The divine isn't somewhere else waiting for you to be worthy. It's right here in how you breathe, speak, and move through the next 5 minutes. You already won the moment you remembered who's actually observing. The one watching your thoughts isn't your thoughts. The one feeling your emotions isn't your emotions. When your internal note is tuned to that awareness, effort dissolves into spontaneous precision. The field stops resisting and starts collaborating. So breathe right now. Feel the ground under you. Recognize the signal that's already here. You didn't find this video by accident. Here's what I want you to do. Start now. Not with a big plan or perfect strategy. Start with how you breathe in the next moment, how you see the person in front of you, how you love, how you remain present. Take this note into your next gesture, and for the next 24 hours, notice 3 confirmations from the field. Don't hunt for them. Don't force meaning onto random events. Just register when something clicks, when inside and outside say the same thing. If this landed, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what's coming next will shift everything. The next video, when you stop seeking attention, the universe starts to notice you. You're not going to want to miss that.